I was trying to do landscape, but whatever. It is what it is. I guess we're doing it today. Undisclosed location in a dump truck, ready to talk about Cyberpunk. Before we get into it, make sure you guys join our Discord community if you want to be part of a cool Cyberpunk community. The link is in the description below. And if you guys want to support the channel, patreon.com/JonJonTheWise is the best way to support me. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you all for your likes, your subs, and your comments. By the way, when you guys do all that, it helps with the algorithm. It like YouTube algorithm shoots it out there for everybody else. So I really appreciate all that kind of engagement and stuff like that. You guys already know. You know how it is. But other than that, make sure you guys subscribe to my podcast, Tabletop Cyberpunk, and there's more Cyberpunk stuff in there. All right, guys. Welcome back. Hope you had a wonderful week. As I said before, not this Monday, but the Monday after, June 6th. June 6th, I will be recording the next episode of Under the Crimson Sky with the crew. I've been editing the last session that we did, the final part of the last session that we did. So that should be coming out soon. What's up, Mr. Skull Baby? Good to see you too, man. Yeah, sorry if you guys haven't seen any content from me. I actually had an idea for a video covering what to do when one of your players passes away. I recorded it and I went to go edit it, and well, two things. The audio was all wonky. What's up, baby? Good to see you, buddy. The audio was all wonky. It was just like really depressing, and like I was speaking in like low volume. I almost cried. I get it. It's like a serious subject, but it was just a little too much, and I was like, I don't think anybody's gonna enjoy this. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna either try to do it again, or I'm just gonna scrap the whole thing. We'll see how it's gonna go. Mr. Skull Baby says, service over here. You know, that's just how it goes out here. Mr. Skull Baby says, Chainhound got terminally bumming the latest, bumming the last 2 weeks, so I'm trying to reinvigorate my red. Oh man, I'm sorry, dude. That's terrible, man. Hope you're not talking about your actual dog, and you're just talking about Cyberpunk Red character. If it's your actual dog, I'm so sorry, man. I really am. I feel for you. Um, but yeah, man, I get that. Actually, it's funny you mentioned that. It's your real dog? Okay, man, I'm sorry, dude. Oh, that hurts, dude. I'm really sorry about that. Well, I was actually talking about that in the last video that I did, the pup behind the character. Okay. Yeah, in the last video I was trying to record and do, I was talking about what to do when one of your players passes away. And basically, I'll give you the same kind of advice, which is if you got to take time off, man. That's totally normal and okay. And thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. Uh, I'm not even sure if I'm live. I have really shitty service here. But yeah, this is it's the Street Fighter thing. But it's what is it? Why am I blanking? The Karate Kid. Jesus Christ. So yeah, there you go. What does it say? I forgot what it says. Oh yeah, strike first, strike hard, no mercy. Yeah, continue. I love it, man. So, thank you. I appreciate it. This is actually this has been through many washes and it's still in good condition. Most of my shirts have just turned into like tattered graphics. But yeah, yeah, Karate Kid, Cobra Kai, same universe, multiverse, whatever. Yeah, exactly. But hey, man, I feel for you, Mr. Skull Baby. The whole thing with your dog, it sucks, man. It really does. If you want to get back into gaming, just remember what makes Cyberpunk fun and focus on that. That's basically what I did with our crew. Is we like took a break. One of us decided. One of the players was like, "Hey, man, I'm done. I can't. I'm not gonna do it. Like, I can't play with this group. I miss our friend too much." And other reasons, like didn't have time and stuff like that. And I was like, that's totally fine, man. It's totally cool. I understand that. But for the rest of us, we still wanted to play, and we just didn't know how to get it started. So we basically just stuck to our guns, and we figured out some way to make it work with the story. And I made sure to like give them the typical Cyberpunk experience. You know what I mean? The thing that we all love about Cyberpunk. I threw that at them in our first session back, It was like brawling in a club, fighting booster gangers, punching cops, getting arrested, gunfights, corporates, and backstories elements coming in. It was like boom, I hit them with all that stuff all at once. You know what I mean? So that worked out. 1 second. Sorry, I didn't want to subject you guys to my cough there. Captain Perfect says, first time catching you live. I have to thank your cyberpunk tips and guides. I started running a campaign for my group. We have had fun with it, still learning. Hey, Captain Perfect, thank you so much for your support and your kind words. I really appreciate it. And I'm happy to help, man. Super happy to help. If any knowledge that I have in this noggin of mine is gonna help people, then that's all I'm trying to do. It's great to see, man. This community is really cool. I see Cyberpunk is growing. It's one of those games that people are like, they always wanted to get into it. They didn't really know what to do, so they buy the core book, they read it, they check out some YouTube videos, and then they're like, "Oh man, this is it." And like I totally get that cuz I'm like that for everything. Warhammer, D&D, board games like Arkham Horror, Marvel Champions. The first thing I do is like I buy the product, I go on YouTube. Actually, I go on YouTube first and I check it out. And then I'll go on Tabletop Simulator, I'll check it out on there, and then I'll watch YouTube videos. I try to run the game by myself, and that's basically how I learn about everything. It's really cool, man. I love it. So I feel like we're so lucky to live in a time right now where you can literally get into any hobby just by going on YouTube and checking out other content creators, and they just like get you in it. You know what I mean? So, oh, there's my water. I'm feeling this view. I don't know how it looks on YouTube, but this is interesting. I usually do it in landscape. All right, here we got a question. JD says I've been running WOD, I think World of Darkness, and playing BattleTech. I heard BattleTech's a really good game. I think it's too low of a model count for my liking, but I understand it. I also heard like the lore is insane. I mean, I love Warhammer lore, so I can't imagine like another game having like more extensive lore than Warhammer. But yo, Young Bohemian. But yeah, I heard that BattleTech has some crazy good lore, like on par with any of the like big franchises out there. Kieran Wagstaff says, GM wants to play without initiative. How would you go about doing combat without initiative? Interesting. Well, you can basically, you could do, there's many ways you can approach that. So you can do kind of like the logical thing where it's like who notices first. Everybody does a perception check. No, okay, let me think about this. If you want to do combat without initiative, then how do you determine who goes first? Like that's the first question that I would ask. It has to be stat based, right? So it's like reflexes, reflex rules as written. It's 1d10 plus your reflex. That's your initiative. So if you just want to take the die out of it, and then you can do that and just have reflex and have a turn order. But if you decide that you want your turn order to be everybody goes at the same time, then you can just do that. You can say like everybody do your damage, everybody do your hit. There's no turn order, and then we all like convene at the end of every roll and damage and decide what happens where. I think it would make combat move quickly, but what sucks about that is you're not letting people react to things that are happening within the battlefield. So for example, if I'm first, I run up to an enemy, I grapple them, and I grab them. Well, now, like, the next person that was going to go is thinking, oh, okay, well, I was going to shoot that guy, but you grabbed that bad guy, so why don't I come and just, like, stab him in the chest? Because now it's, like, an easy kill. I was originally going to shoot that guy, but now I'm reacting to the thing that you did. So initiative, what it does is it rewards good luck, high stats, and also gives you the opportunity to react to things. So if your game master wants to take that out of the game, I would be interested to hear why they want to do that in the first place, and how they want to make that work. Because that I feel like it robs the players of their experience of like being able to react in combat and to be rewarded for having high skills and a high stat. So maybe elaborate if you want, Kieran, Wagstaff, elaborate a little bit more on what your game master is thinking. You know, it's interesting. I don't think that that's a bad idea. I just think it's interesting. Alpha Strike has high model count, says JD. Okay, interesting. Meester Skull Baby, have you seen the Cyberpunk miniatures from Unit 9? Yeah, I have. They're great miniatures. Monster Fight Club has some good miniatures. Dude, we live in a time right now where anybody with a 3D printer can just like print out miniatures. I know it's like a whole hobby in itself. I know because I was going to get into it, but it's really like a huge undertaking to like get into printing miniatures. It's not like plug and play, you know? You got to clean it, you got to like repair it, and STLs. You got to know a little bit about CAD and designing and stuff. So, but that also means that there's legitimate people out there that do like most of the work for you, and we have access to all kinds of miniatures. There's proxy miniatures too, like miniatures that are sci-fi miniatures that work perfectly for cyberpunk. So, but I've seen those. Those are really good, high quality miniatures. I like them. Um, Captain Perfect. I notice my players hate that you can't conceal bigger guns. I like the mechanic, but how would I ease players to concealing weapons or please players? Concealing has never been a concern in other systems. Okay, how hard should I be with implementing that rule? See, this is the thing about big guns. Like, it depends how big the gun is. The downside to having a big gun, well, the upside to having a big gun is big damage, right? The downside is concealment. You can't really like walk around with a big gun and hide it. People are going to know you have a big gun and they're going to act accordingly, whether they tell you, hey, you're not supposed to have that here. So, for narrative reasons, it makes sense. But if your players don't like that, they can go to a tech and a tech can fabricate some way for the guns to be concealable. There's a way to do that. I think it's an upgrade cost or something. It's either upgrade or invent or fabricate. But basically, concealment has been put there to balance the game out because if you're going to a place that doesn't allow big guns and you need to hide it, then that's like the advantage that you have if you can conceal a big gun. You know what I mean? So you can completely take that out. Like for example, in my game, it takes place in Texas, the Amber Oasis, the Devil's Triangle, and in that area, if you're not in a city, people are packing. Like people have their assault rifles slinged in front of them. No one's hiding anything because you're out in the wilds, dude. You know, you're like looking out for yourself. So in that situation, concealment there's no need for that. You know what I mean? But when you're in a big city environment and people want to remain safe, you know, quote unquote, you walking around with a big gun is a liability. It attracts attention. It makes the authorities want to come up to you and go like, "Hey, what the hell are you thinking?" You know what I mean? You can't be walking around with an assault rifle. Like pistols are okay as long as they're holstered right next to you, but you got an assault rifle on you. You can't just walk around with it in this city. So that's like that's what it is. You could tell your players like, "Hey man, you don't need to conceal any of your weapons, but you're going to be confronted. You know what I mean? People are nervous around you. You have a big giant gun and you're walking in a big city environment. It's for narrative reasons, you know what I mean? But I'm curious to see like what their argument is against it, why they don't like it. Is it because they just want to be able to have access to their big powerful weapons at all times? Well, that sounds like your players want to play in an environment where they don't have to conceal their weapons. They're not into the narrative part of it. They're not into the social aspect or the consequences of having a big concealed gun or non-concealed gun. It sounds like they just want to go around, have their big gun, and have access to their weapons at all times, which means to me as a game master, I'm like, okay, well, they don't like the city environment, or I need to put them in an environment where they can have their big guns, combat zones, the open road, stuff like that, or even like cities that are not well protected by police. Maybe not a combat zone, but it's like on the verge of being a combat zone, those kinds of things. Or they're hired security that have credentials. So when people come up to them and say, hey, why the hell do you have these big guns? They say like, well, it's part of my job. Here's my credentials. You know what I mean? So I hope that answered your question. You feel free to elaborate on that or ask any questions after that. Strive, what's up? Hey, John, just wanting to say thank you for asking my question. No problem. I'm definitely taking your suggestions on board. No problem, dude. Thank you so much for providing a question. If you guys have any questions for James Hutt and I for our Night City Council, JonJonTheWise at gmail.com is the way to go. Jimmy, I love you, buddy. You're the beautiful bearded bastard. My short king. How, Mr. Skull Baby, how would you rule on a player using a pop up concealed weapon, pressed it against somebody's head or stomach, and pulling the trigger, just jump to initiative? Will they get extra damage for surprise? Yeah, man. Good question. So let's look at rules as written, right? Rules as written, if I pull out a pistol, it's a surprise round, right? Like let's say I'm face to face with somebody. I know you're taller. I'm just joking with you. Don't get all sensitive, Jimmy. Jesus. For those of you that don't know, sorry for this tangent. I met Jimmy in real life, and for some reason I thought he was short, and he's actually taller than me. He's like 6 foot. But it's funny. Even my wife thought he was short, so we call him Short King, even though he's not. So anyway, um, so rules as written, you pull out a weapon, you put it up to somebody's head, you fire, they basically let's say like you were so quick they didn't react. So how does that look mechanically? Mechanically, you roll stealth, they roll perception, they fail. Okay, they didn't see you pull out the gun, you have it up to their head. Now it's a called shot, right? Because instead of just aiming and shooting at if just like wildly shooting at them, you are aiming for their head. So rules as written, you got to roll a -8 to hit, and then you roll damage. You could roll damage and not kill them. You know what I mean? You could roll like 4 2s, and you basically only did 12 damage to their head. They maybe have like 4 SP armor on their head. You didn't do any damage to them. Everybody on the table is like, that feels bad. That doesn't feel good at all. That doesn't feel fun. It feels like the game did not facilitate the fun. It actually hindered the fun. So in that situation, I would definitely use game master discretion. I would say, okay, you want to just like sneak up a gun and shoot them, stealth versus perception, rules as written, fine. You won that roll off. They didn't see you pull out the gun. You have it to their head. You don't have to roll to hit. You automatically hit because you're so close and they didn't catch you. I'm just going to give it to you. Okay. So they didn't even have time to react to it. You shoot them. I'm going to say max damage. All right. If you're using a big, scary gun, max damage. If you're using a small gun, like a 2d6 weapon, that's 12. So 24 damage, right? To their head. That's pretty hefty. If they survive because they have some kind of cyberware or armor, I might have the enemy do a stun check to see if they can withstand that. I mean, you get shot in the head no matter what, you're going down on the ground. Whether you survive or not, you're going down on the ground, right? So the idea is, are they unconscious or are they still conscious and able to survive? I would definitely rule out if it's an NPC that's not important, like, not a big bad guy. I would just kill him. I would be like, yeah, you blow his brains out. If it's like a really important NPC, I would give them the opportunity to like make death saves, make stun saves, or something to keep them in the fight. But they have to be like greatly damaged. You know what I mean? So that's my advice to you: is definitely skip rules as written in those kinds of situations and go for the cool thing. You know what I mean? Captain Perfect. I run my game in Night City, and it's probably because they really want to have access to their weapons at all times. Well, Night City rules as written, according to the lore, you can only have pistols on you. You can't have assault rifles, so you have to conceal it. Like if cops see you walking around with assault rifles, they'll stop you and they'll be like, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" You know. So Night City is a dangerous place, but it's not as dangerous as a combat zone. Like there has to be levels, you know what I mean? So in a combat zone, no one can tell you shit. In Night City, the cops will be like, "Hey, who's this guy walking around with an assault rifle? We got to stop him and at least ask him questions." You know what I mean? Someone's got to talk to you. whether you get arrested or whatever. They might even tell you, like, hey, man, put that away, or like, put the magazine away. I can see it's loaded. The safety's off. Like, you're not allowed to do that. You know what I mean? If you're gonna have your assault rifle out, the magazine has to be in a separate compartment in your bag. Blah blah blah. They have to be harassed. You know what I mean? So next time they walk around with a big gun, you don't have to tell them like, "Oh my god, everybody shoots you." No, you could just be like, "All right, well, every time you go do that, you're gonna be hassled." You know what I mean? Whether it's the police or gangers that are like, who's this guy in our territory with an assault rifle walking around? You know what I mean? People are going to harass you, whether that leads to a fight or something else. You know, maybe you're trying to be covert and you don't have time to like talk to the police or gangers and stuff like that. All that adds to the narrative and the fun, in my opinion. So you can tell your players, look, man, you can do whatever you want. You don't have to conceal your weapon, but there's consequences to everything. You know what I mean? I'm not telling you how to play your character, but I'm just telling you that if you walk around with an assault rifle in a city environment where the law is you can't have an assault rifle out, you're going to be hassled. They're going to at least ask you a question and detain you for a second. So that's what I would tell my players. Do whatever you want. Get in fights with the police. Who cares? MMO Junkie, do you need to have the auto fire skill to use a weapon with auto fire capability? No. To use the weapon, you don't need the auto fire skill to use auto fire. You don't need any skill to use it. You don't have to have any points in any skill to use the skill. But if you don't have points in the skill, you only use 1d10 plus your stat. So you're greatly, unless you roll a 10, it's going to be really, really difficult to make that skill check. So you can use any gun at any time. For example, in our campaign Under the Crimson Sky, I don't think anybody has heavy weapons. Like, I gave them some IPs so they can have, and I think one of them put like 2 points in heavy weapons, but they have a heavy weapon and none of them know how to use it. So they're all basically rolling like a really low skill stat situation. So that's all it is. You can use the gun, but the likeliness of you passing is very low because you don't have any points in the skill. Paul Shification, what's up, buddy? How would you encourage better RP in a game as a game master, like characters interacting in character versus talking and explaining what they're doing? Good question. So, first thing I would say is it's good to know how your players enjoy playing. Like, what's the thing that they like about the game? Some people like combat, some people prefer social situations, and if you're like me, you're somewhere in the middle. Like, I want to have at least like one combat every 1 or 2 sessions, and I want to make sure that we always have social interactions. So if your players are now, what I think you're talking about is, for example, I'll give you like an example of how it goes. Instead of saying, hey, I walk up to the bouncer and I tell him something to try to let us in. I try to charm him into letting us in for free, and then you roll, right? Instead of doing that, what you're saying is, how do I encourage my players to walk up to the bouncer and say, "Excuse me, sir, how you doing? My name is John the Wise. I'm a famous YouTuber. Can you let me into this nightclub, please?" All right, I'm gonna roll persuasion. I think that's what you're trying to encourage, right? So as a game master, if my player says, "I want to walk up to the bouncer and I want to charm them into letting me in," I would say, "Okay, what do you say to them?" And then let them say what they want to say. You know, they don't have to like completely act it out, but I want to hear what they have to say. Like, what are the words that your character says? And then it's up to the dice gods to figure out whether what they said is something feasible. You know, sometimes people will say stuff like, "Hey, I go up to the bouncer and I tell them, 'Hey, I want to be let in.'" And then I would say, "Okay, what do you say to them?" Okay, I say, "Hi, I'm JonJonTheWise. I'm a famous YouTuber. Could you please let me in?" And I roll persuasion. I fail. The bouncer says, "I don't give a shit who you are, John the what? Get the hell out of here. Unless you paid for a ticket, you're out." If I pass, they go, "Oh yeah, I think I've heard about you. Oh yeah, that's right, that's right. You have that cool YouTube channel about dumb things. Yeah, go ahead, come on in, man. Can I get an autograph?" That's how I would interact with it. Is I basically ask them like, "Okay, what do you say? What do you do?" when they say like I want to go into this place and do blah blah blah, I say, okay, how does that look? Another example is in combat. They'll say, I take my katana and I want to attack the enemy with my katana, and I say, okay, roll for it. All right, you hit. How did your attack look? And then I want them to explain to me what they did, because they have an idea of their character. They're like, oh yeah, I jump up and I do like a striking sweep downwards. And I go, okay, well, you hit them. So the enemy tried to block you, but they were too late. You were too fast for them, and you connected before they could parry you. And your blade goes straight through their shoulder blade, or their shoulder, or something like that. So they basically give you, it's give and take. They give you something, and then you take that and you make something with it. So that's my advice to you. Kieran Wagstaff says GM wants to play without initiative, finds it boring, wants combat to be faster, and emphasizes everything is simultaneous and round 3 seconds. Yeah, that's the elaboration I was looking for. Yeah, so it sounds like your game master wants everything to happen all at once. I mean, technically, that's what does happen. Initiative, initiative is basically just there to let us know who had like a smaller edge in these 3 seconds. So combat rounds are in 3 seconds, but we got to know who was the fastest within those 3 seconds. Because 3 seconds, here, I'm going to count it with you: 1,000, 1,000, 1,000. In those 3 seconds, who was able to act first, who was too slow. That's all initiative does. It just simulates who's faster in those 3 seconds and who's slower in those 3 seconds. And it's like a cascading effect. As the rounds go on, the person that acted last is always going to be last, and the person that was the fastest is always going to be number one, because they were the first to act. And over like 6 seconds, 9 seconds, 12 seconds, these are all the things that happen within the various rounds. In Cyberpunk Red, a lot can happen in a round. I usually don't go past like 5 rounds of combat, which is 15 seconds. Most of our combats are 15 seconds long at most. And then there's like a resolution. Like either people run away or everybody's dead. So that's all initiative is. It's just simulating who has split second reaction time within those 3 seconds. No problem, MMO Junkie. Glad to do it. Jamie, that's why I like the Exalted game. There's a mechanic for bonus cool factor dice. Yeah, I mean, I add the cool factor rule of cool to my games anyway. Like if, for example, if one of my players wants to do something fun, I think, excuse me, one of them was like, hey, I want to like slowly walk up to this guy and kick him out of the window. I'm like, wow, that's a pretty cool thing to do as a badass, like, especially if he's like pointing a gun at you. And I said, okay, roll cool. So you roll 1d10 and you want your result to be under your cool stat. So if your cool is a 6, you want to roll 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1. Those are the numbers you want to roll. And if you pass, then I say, yeah, the thing that you wanted to do, it happens. Like I'm giving it to you because